Hey guys, so I just wanted to address something that a lot of our customers have been coming and talking to us about recently. Ever since the whole pandemic issue we've been facing around the globe, a lot of organisations are coming and asking us uh, how they can bring their costs down, at least temporarily, in Microsoft Azure in their cloud environments. Some of these operating costs can be, as some of you know, probably quite high. So we've been sort of trying to just maybe at least temporarily help these customers bring the cost down so that they can at least appear to the business as if they are saving some money during this time. So I want to share a few things today, just a few tips. These tips are mainly focused at um, IT managers and engineers. Um, some of these tips can be applied straight away. Some of them probably need a bit more understanding and they need to be thought about a bit more than others. But anyway, let's get to these tips. So first and foremost, power down what's not in use. So in Azure, as you know, most of these um, most of these cloud environments, they charge you for your consumption of compute, for example. So a lot of organizations have these VMs running inside their environments and they're not actually in use. So what we like to do is to go through the list with our customers and show them what they have running, and that usually gets the juices flowing, what they can shut down. um, Once you've established that, what we suggest is that you put these virtual machines in auto shutdown schedules. So you can set these configuration settings inside your portal. You can find the VMs that you want to turn off at a certain time every day. So, for example, a dev workload that needs to be turned off at 5 p.m. every day, you can actually make that setting in the Azure portal. A lot of people are not really, or maybe they've actually provisioned these VMs a long time ago before the auto shutdown feature was available. So go back, have a look, maybe export a list of all your VMs, see what's heavily utilized, what's not, and what maybe you can shut down at a certain time. If you get a bit tricky, you can even use logic apps to turn them back on. So you can create a trigger, for example, um, a trigger that listens to a mailbox, and when it receives an email from a certain person, it can turn on that specific VM. That's a good way you can save. Anyway, moving on, we have reserved instances. Um, just making sure that any static VMs, so VMs like domain controllers, SCCM servers, anything that you would have on all the time and needs to be available all the time, think about doing a reserved instance on that compute. The compute there is sort of, it's sitting there. It's going to be on all the time. We know it has to be available for whenever your users log on. The main thing is that you try and bring the cost down, and the way you can do that is purchase a reserved instance from Azure. What that means is that you are dedicating for at least 1 year or up to 3 years to run that VM. Azure Microsoft gives you quite a large discount, up to 60% actually, on reserved instances. So have a look at that. There once upon a time, sorry, you were only able to reserve instances if you paid for the whole cost up front. What it does mean is that you can actually go in and pay month to month for that reserved instance, even though you've committed. With the reserved instance as well, it's important to note when you do reserve a machine, you're not reserving that particular VM. So, for example, if you have three DS12 type machines and you reserve one of those, you're not reserving that particular instance, you're just reserving a DS12. So, what that means is that if you have another in the same family and you decide that you no longer need one of those three, the reserved instance will just fall to the other VM. So regardless of, if you're going to be chopping and changing your family and your compute, you still be making that saving on at least that one DS12, as long as you have that family. Right sizing your virtual machines. This one is pretty important. A lot of customers, when they moved into Azure, they might have over provisioned VMs, over provisioned disks. We suggest that you at least go through the VM, all the VMs, sorry, and you make sure that they're actually being utilized. Make sure that you run every now and then, you run some scripts in your environment that can check for any disks that aren't actually attached to any virtual machines. These disks just sit there, especially if they're managed disks. They just sit there and they sort of bring up your consumption. And you're not actually using the disk. It's just because someone might have deleted the VM and the disk didn't delete properly and it's just sitting there unattached, but you're still getting charged for the storage. So there is orphan disk scripts out there that you can find probably on GitHub. Run those scripts, and anything that you can delete, just delete it. There's you got the soft delete function as well, so you can enable 7-day undelete. Just before you do that, obviously make sure that you've got undelete on, and make sure that no one's actually using the unattached disk. Especially in a scenario where you have like Citrix Gold images and stuff, maybe they're unattached, but just be wary of that. Have used ASR to migrate from uh, on premises to Azure. What happens is after the migration, your application is still running by default. So even though you've failed into Azure, you might still actually be replicating on-prem to Azure. It's important to note that there's a significant amount of cost in that replication. So just have a look and make sure that you've turned off any ASR services that are no longer required. Thanks, guys, and I think that should probably be enough to get you guys started. Let me know how you go. If you have any issues, feel free to ask any questions in the comments. I'm happy to help where we can. Thanks.